Well, thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to meet you. And thank you so much for coming on the Impact series. We're just going to wait a minute while folks are getting on the line. I am also going to add here our moderator. So give me a second to do that.
Sounds good.
Add the Webbies as the moderator. Yeah. How are you doing? Where are you in the world?
So I am in Montclair, New Jersey, which is about 14 miles directly west of the Lincoln Tunnel.
Okay. So I'm in Brooklyn. So you are also having beautiful, wonderful weather today, I'm assuming.
Yes. And in fact, soon you will move from Brooklyn to Montclair because that's what people do.
That's the trajectory, right?
It is. We call that the migration route.
Yeah. I have, I hate to talk about, I have a family member who lives in Croton on Hudson, and they call Croton Park Slope North because everyone from Park Slope moves to Croton. So.
Actually, we have a team member who moved from Bed-Stuy to Croton.
Yeah. Okay, so Bed-Stuy North is a...
So these generalizations and stereotypes are actually rooted in reality.
Yes, sometimes they are legit. So, well, thank you so much for joining today, and thank you for being giving us some time to talk to us. Thank you, everyone who's in the audience today. Please feel free to send comments and questions throughout the session today, and just thank you so much for being a part of it. So the Impact series, I'll just give the quick intro. I'm Jessica Lauretti. I'm the managing director of the Anthem Awards. The Anthem Awards is brought to you by the Webby Awards, and it is a brand new platform dedicated to honoring purpose and mission-driven work from around the world. We just finished our inaugural season with an extraordinary first year where we honored so many wonderful people who are working at nonprofit organizations, nations, artists, creatives, activists, all kinds of people all over the world working on so many amazing things. And as my mom said when I sent her the website, she was like, this actually like really gives me hope that there are people out there doing such amazing work. So that's my intro. Joan Garry, you are a legend. Thank you so much for being here with us. Can you just start by telling us your story? Tell us your background. How did you get here today to Montclair, New Jersey?
Well, I came from Park Slope, actually in a Volvo wagon, actually, Jessica. So, like many people who find their way over to nonprofits, I actually came from corporate America, right? I was part of the management team that launched MTV in the early 80s when they actually did have music videos. And I moved from there, spent some time at Showtime, but then I moved over to become the CEO of GLAAD, a large LGBT organization. And, you know, the joy and privilege of leading a nonprofit organization, it totally blew me away. It was just the most remarkable of experiences, and I never looked back. And during that period of time, in the sort of the post-GLAAD days, it seemed that I became, because of my management and my nonprofit experience, a little bit of a kind of a nonprofit evangelist. I wanted people to have what I was having, right? And through my blog and my podcast, I kind of became this like Dear Abby of the nonprofit space.
Okay.
My sweet spot today as a consultant is that I'm a CEO of, I'm an executive coach for CEOs of larger nonprofits. But there got to be a point where it just didn't feel like enough because I started to really recognize the size of the sector and the kinds of organizations that exist in the sector. So, fact, 70% of nonprofit organizations have budgets under $1 million, and about 2/3 of those have budgets under $500,000. And these people desperately need professional development, and they can't afford it. And so from music videos to GLAAD to trying to figure out a way to reach the maximum number of leaders of small nonprofits led us to create the Nonprofit Leadership Lab. It was a way for us to kind of coach at scale, to provide resources, right? How to ask for money, how to build a better board, how to run a great board meeting, to offer a sense of community. But I think in many ways our secret sauce is that we understand how hard the work is, and we care at an emotional level. We provide support for people because we understand that our members do some of the hardest work there is.
I mean, it's such an important space that you've identified here, because if you think about how many schools, resources, professional development, tools, classes, everything exists for the business sector, right? And you think about the insane number of MBA programs, insane number of entrepreneur do-it-yourself programs,
or management training programs in companies. Yeah, we don't have those.
Right. But like that just doesn't exist in the same way for the nonprofit sector. So it's such an amazing space that you're cultivating here. Can you talk about what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned kind of in this work, and really what led you to launch the Leadership Lab?
So, you know, I believe that people pick up, they're like a rollerboard of stories and lessons, right? They're always pulling it around. And at every stop, they add something to it, right? Yeah. And so corporate America, I got the foundations. I learned how to really be a five-star manager. I learned how to set goals. I learned how to manage finances and budgets, like the foundational stuff.
Right.
And that was really, really important. But the day that I decided to apply for the GLAAD job, it was because I actually was learning a different lesson. And it was partially because my wife and I had become parents, which was, we were pioneers in this regard, right? And I think I learned a really valuable lesson once our children arrived, that I had a voice and I needed to use it. That I was learning that one person can make a difference. And ultimately, I think through all the experiences I've had, whether I'm coaching the CEO of the Legal Aid Society or the National Alliance of Mental Illness, whether I'm working with somebody who runs a domestic violence shelter in Seattle, like the big takeaway for me is that life is just too damn short to sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. So well said. I mean, thank you. Just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done throughout the course of your career. And I'm so grateful that you had that moment of inspiration to kind of move from the for-profit sector into this work. I know that while you say life is too short, also this work can be very taxing as well as mentally draining. Can you talk about, you know, how do you prioritize your mental health? Like what continues to inspire you to do this work, you know, in fighting for social justice?
Well, we see this every single day with our thousands of members in the Leadership Lab. Like they need moral support. The work is really, really hard. If they're in the advocacy space like I was, right, you're up against those people who don't get it, those people who totally disagree with you, and it can really deplete you, right? And so you have to sort of dig deep and think about those things that fuel you, to your point, right? And for me at GLAAD, actually, sometimes it was hate mail, right? Is that like reading a piece of hate mail, while it actually shook me, it also reminded me about what we were up against. But in a sort of a higher plane, I would say that there are two things that really fuel me, sort of philosophically. One of them is that there's a Jewish value. It's called tikkun olam. And for those who are watching, who are of the Jewish faith, or if you know this value, what it actually means is that people are put on this earth to repair the world. Like it's your job, right? It's your job.
Right.
And this has always sung out to me. My wife is the daughter of Holocaust survivors. And so I have learned so much about Judaism. And I, you know, regardless of your faith, the notion that you are here to do good works resonates for me deeply. The second piece for me is pretty straightforward. is that we created a family at a time when we were very much pioneers.
Yeah.
And when Eileen and I decided to have kids in the late 1980s, I was really hell-bent on doing whatever I could to make sure that the world accepted our kids and their family structure. I didn't want to. That was something I couldn't sit on the sidelines about.
Right. Personal experience. I mean, I think personal experience drives so many people. You see that in advocates all the day. They often have a personal story of this happens to me, this happened to my mother, this happened to my father, and what motivates them to do that work. So that's cool. Let's talk a little bit about Nonprofit Leadership Lab. So you founded it in 2017. Tell us about how it works, what you're hoping to accomplish, what you want to grow and do next, and things like that.
Yep. So, we weren't, it was an organic process to launch it. As I described, we were starting, my blog and my podcast was generating so much attention that, I get these calls from, somebody who was running a choir in Helena, Montana. They'd find my cell phone and they'd ask me, do you know any board members, or can you point me towards foundations? And I have to say that I think one of the primary motivations of starting the lab was guilt. It was like, I can't help her. What am I going to do? Right? Yeah. And there were thousands of people like that. And so it was a way to scale the kinds of resources that I have, and build a team of kindred spirits who could support them. And so guilt was a driver and need was the other driver, right? Is that, since we launched, we have supported over 10,000 members from North America and around the world. Right? Thanks to their resources, they have raised money. They have built stronger, more diverse boards. They have a stronger relationship with their board chairs. And we absolutely emphasize self-care. And we really work to try to figure out, these are time-saving resources so these folks can get some of their lives back, right? So we have content, we have community with these thousands of members who share their own best practices, and lift each other up as well. It's a very nurturing and kind of joyful place, actually. And our hope is that we can continue to get the word out about this resource. And that, I think right now we have about pushing on 5,000 active members. And if you think about that 1.5 million nonprofits in the United States, we're kind of talking the tip of the iceberg. And for me, I just see how valuable it is to nonprofit leaders, not just in terms of their technical resources, but also they're overcoming the imposter syndrome they often have of like, I'm not gonna be able to do this, or I have to speak at a gala, right? And so being their champion and their advocate, I see how valuable it is. And I want many more people to have what they're having.
Have you seen through the course of your work, are there, sort of the go-to things, maybe you just were talking about some of them, the kind of specific issues or specific needs in nonprofit leadership training?
I think that the single biggest, and it's part of sort of the framework that I use as part of my coaching, is about the relationship between the staff and the board. That I feel like the nonprofit model is very unique. Yeah. So, when I worked in corporate America, the person that I reported to probably had my job and got promoted out of it, right? It's not how it works in the nonprofit sector. Not only does that person probably not had my job, but that person is a volunteer who has a whole nother job. And so this this model is kind of screwy in some ways, although it affords the opportunity for an organization to bring to it so many people who have value, expertise, lived experience, that that organization might not be able to afford, right? So for me, the challenge in the nonprofit sector is to focus on, and we do a lot of this inside the lab, building the board of your dreams, recognizing that the board is a valuable partner in your ability to reach your mission. And that, you know, yes, absolutely. We work to help people raise money. We do a grant writing boot camp, right? We help board members who are also members of the lab become better board members. But at the end of the day, what we're really looking at is, rather than a hierarchical kind of org chart, I think of a really thriving nonprofit much more like a twin engine jet, where there are two very high powered jets. They function independently, but they actually can't function without each other. And I think the more that executive directors focus on the power their board can bring, the value their board can bring, the more that nonprofit executive directors can let go a little bit of their type A control freak personalities. And yes, I mean you, whoever you are listening. The more that we can build a much more of a partnership where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
That's such great advice, I think, not just for nonprofits, but for for-profits as well. I mean, I think that one of the greatest to achieve is when you can unlock the potential of your team and have everyone working together. So
it's actually one of the things I was saying, that having been in both lands, right? I think that the for-profit sector has so much to learn from the nonprofit sector about just this, is push away from the hierarchy, move towards team-based approach to things, give more people around the table a voice. That's what the nonprofit sector does really well, and the for-profit sector has the opportunity to really learn a lesson from that.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think of it as like, if we can stop thinking of everything in terms of transaction and start to think of it in terms of partnership and collaboration, think about all of the amazing things that we might be able to do.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is one of the things we talk about all the time around fundraising, for example. So many people think that's a transactional thing. Right. It's so not a transactional thing. Right. It is about a relationship. It's about inviting someone to come closer to your organization, to know more about it, to do more for it, and that brings them a sense of meaning and purpose. And if we have learned anything from the pandemic, people are hungry for meaning and purpose.
Right. And it allows them to be a part of your community, be a part of the work that you're doing, for them to feel connected to it as well.
Absolutely.
Tell us about, you have a podcast, you have a blog, give us all the information on how folks can learn more, see more, read, listen, all of that.
So I want to say that, you know, if I am sort of evangelical about this whole professional development thing as it relates to nonprofit leaders, it's because I don't think they're advocates enough for their own professional development, right? Sometimes they think it's a luxury.
Right.
Right. Sometimes they think that their boards will see them as, oh, you need professional development? That means I thought you came as a rock star, right? Yeah. Ask that to, you know, Roger Federer, and whether he would ever go on the tennis court without his coach, right? So I'd like to see more nonprofit executive directors start to see that professional development is a necessity and not a luxury. And so that's why we offer such a palette of resources. So our podcast and our blog, and you can learn all about all of those at my site at joangarry.com, and that's with 2 R's. And if you'd like to learn more about the Nonprofit Leadership Lab, we would love to have you as part of our community. And you can learn more about the lab by going to thelab.ws/anthem. thelab.ws/anthem. And like I said, you know, for me, I didn't imagine this leadership lab would take off the way that it has. It makes all the sense in the world that it has, because people are so hungry to get their jobs right. They're so hungry for moral support. And all of that is available to them inside the lab at a very modest price.
It's amazing. Do you have any, final words? A lot has happened this week politically, and maybe folks out there who are feeling a little hopeless, afraid, scared, angry, all of the feelings that many people who work in social justice feel when things are happening around the world. Do you have any words of advice or words of wisdom for us?
So I hear people say to me that there is a dearth of leadership in our society, right? Mm-hmm. That our world is remarkably polarized. And I just have to say, one of the joys I have in my coaching business and in the, the time that I spend every day talking to, I might talk to a Leadership Lab member from South Africa or Toronto or San Jose, California, is that I am surrounded by leaders every single day. These remarkable, resilient, fierce advocates who deeply believe that one person can make a difference. It's just like you talked about earlier, right? This is, to me, the hope in our society lives among those people who have made an intentional choice to get out of the stands and onto the field. Mm-hmm. And I guess if I have one piece of advice to everybody who is listening, those people in the stands, they just need to be invited. Just go over to the stands and invite them to be a part of what you're doing, right? And it will be of value to them, but don't forget how much value it will be to them as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for everything you do. And thank you so much for being with us today. Everyone will go check out the Leadership Lab and become a part of that community. Thank you to everyone watching. We'll be archiving this and sharing it over email and social and on our website and stuff in the coming days for folks who weren't able to join today. And again, Anthem Awards Season 2 will be launching mid-June. So stay tuned for more information. We'll be back next week with another episode. Joan, thank you so much. Enjoy this beautiful...
Well, just let me say thank you to you. What Anthem is all about, what your mom said about Anthem, is so spot on. These are the kinds of stories people need to hear to fuel them, right? To put gas back in their tanks. And so thank you for the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm just here to help this community and build this platform so that everyone can share their work. And I will tell my mom that you said that this weekend. So
yes. Yeah. Please do tell your mom.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a